Welcome to OkState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad you decided to tune in. Hey, Coach, what a weekend it was. I mean, it was like one of those deals to where you're in Florida, it's like 90 degrees. You're kind of in survival mode. You're coming off a big, huge emotional win against OU, and then you just get pounded on Friday, and it's just like, oh, wow. Then Saturday you have the big disappointment. Quite frankly, I wasn't exactly what to expect on Sunday. I was proud of the boys for coming back and grinding that Sunday win, but what were your thoughts?
Yeah, coming off that OU weekend or that OU midweek game, we talked a lot about, the mental approach that this team was going to take. And I thought maybe that might be what would carry over into the weekend. And it just didn't. So, we talked about also lineups being similar for 2 games in a row with the, Game 3 of the last weekend series, and then carrying over to the OU game at midweek, and pretty much the same lineup as it was Friday. That looks like that's going to rotate a little bit depending on who's catching, what that lineup looks like. But looks like they've found a lineup that they like as far as who's at the top, who's at the middle, and who's at the bottom. And just didn't see, in my opinion, I don't know, I've kind of thought about it all weekend since the Friday game, is just didn't seem like we had the same aggressiveness or same approach at the plate that we did in the midweek game. And I know, scouting reports and who's pitching from the other team has a lot to do with that. But just going back to what we've talked about, the last couple of weeks, is when we have infinitely more strikeouts than we do base on balls, then we struggle. And when the walks and hit by pitches and those free bases are similar to the strikeouts, then we do pretty well. And that was pretty much the storyline of the weekend.
5 hits, 7 strikeouts, just 2 walks on the game on Friday. No other way to put it. It was bowling shoe ugly. You go halfway across the world, you're in Florida. Same thing that happened to the football team. It's like, man, can we never go to Florida ever again and play a men's sporting event with Oklahoma State versus UCF? Because it was just like you go out there and it's like you're just in the ozone layer or something. It's just like nothing works properly when you go out there, right? I mean, it just kind of seemed that way.
Right. And what's strange is, the things that we talk about as the Achilles heel, or the things when OSU's offense is struggling. These are kind of the metrics, right? Strikeouts versus walks, that sort of thing. But if you flip the coin and you look at the other side of it, UCF had 9 strikeouts and only 3 walks. Yeah. They get 13 and they score 13 runs. So you kind of have to look at it from the standpoint of, why is the metric for our offense not the same metric as another offense? And it goes back to what we talked about last time, and it's just the fact of the timely hits. If you look at games 1 and 2 over the weekend, OSU's hitting 182 with runners on and 167 with runners in scoring position. And then if you've then looking at today's game, in game 3, they're hitting 429 with runners on and 500 with runners in scoring position. So if you look at the 2 different metrics, whether it's OSU's offense or UCF's offense, the biggest difference is who's putting the ball in play and who's getting the timely hits. Mm-hmm. And in games 1 and 2, it obviously wasn't OSU. And in game 3, OSU did a much better job of getting the timely hits and moving runners and getting runners across the plate when they're in scoring position.
And just listening to Josh after the Sunday game, first of all, he sounded totally exhausted. It was a just extremely exhausting weekend going all the way out to Florida. It's hot. You have the Saturday night disappointment. The Sunday game didn't seem like it was ever going to end. So just kind of sounded relieved that they at least did win one game. Hey, I know this is Oklahoma State baseball. We talk about this, Coach. We consider them to be a blue blood. There is no such thing as a moral victory for Oklahoma State baseball. But it was kind of relieving to at least come out of there with one win. You didn't want to get swept.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even the guys on TV were saying the same thing. What is OSU going to look like today after that heartbreak yesterday? And having that emotional roller coaster of being real high and then being real low and then coming back for a noon game today. And, like you said to start the podcast, I was pleased and proud of the way they showed up today and was aggressive from first at bat, and in my opinion, and again, I don't have the scouting reports on the opponent's pitchers and those kind of things, but it just seemed like they were much more aggressive and had a different approach that mirrored that midweek game last week, today, or the game 3 versus games 1 and 2. And so, tough game to bounce back from, but they did a good job in doing that today.
By the way, I did put it on my social medias. You're seeing it right here in front of you. There was that 2-2 pitch that Gabe Davis threw. Hey, and you know I'm a big OSU fan. There is no bigger OSU fan, especially in the baseball side of things, man. Grew up, just absolute diehard. The 2-2 pitch that Gabe Davis threw that would have been strike 3 on Sundin. The next pitch he hit over the right field wall to tie it. It was off the plate. I don't know how he took the pitch. It was a slider, and it was just a tremendous pitch from Gabe Davis. And I have no idea how Sundin took that pitch, but it was off the plate, so just give that guy credit. He got himself back into a fastball count, and he hit one over the right center field wall, and that was disappointing.
Yeah, and it did a good job going with it. It's on the outer half of the plate, and it's not like it was left up in the zone. It was probably knee to mid-thigh, and he just went with it. And when you got a guy that's throwing 95 miles an hour, if you square one up, let the velocity of the pitch do the work for you. And he did a good job, and hats off to him for having a great at-bat and tying the ball game up right there. So, it's just one of those deals where you're that close to winning the series right there, and they just made the play when we didn't, and there was a few instances where errors cost us this weekend, and with on a bunt situation, our pitcher throws one over first base head, and we got a kid picked off, we throw it into left field, and some sloppy at times, and again, I keep going back to it because it's what is in my mind with this team, and when they take the mental approach of bringing the aggressive. I kind of relate it to football season, right? When you have a football team that's fast paced, up tempo, and that kind of stuff, and then you try and slow the game down.
Yes,
they don't look as good.
They don't.
And I think that's. In my mind, that's kind of where we are with OSU baseball right now. Is the more aggressive they are, the more the faster they play, the better they play. And if we sit around and try and take pitches, that kid on Friday night for UCF nibbled on the edge, and we never made him get off the edge.
Yeah.
And at some point in time,
took a lot of fastballs. It seemed like
it did, and at some point in time, in order to get that ball off the edge, you got to start attacking the ball on the edge. And so it just seemed like we never got into a groove where we felt comfortable. That guy, he just kept nibbling on the outside corner, and then every now and again he'd throw the slider that would move off the plate, and we never did attack the fastball on the edge. That like we've talked about in previous podcasts, that the more base runners you get, that ball starts creeping towards the middle plate. And I think you saw that today in Game 3, and everybody becomes a better hitter when the ball's in the middle of the plate. And so anyway, I think that's I think OSU, just for me, in my opinion, I think they got to take that aggressive approach and let the kids go up there and swing back.
This season seems to resemble exactly how Colin Brigham goes. It seems like when he's in the middle of the lineup and he's doing damage like he did on Sunday, the game where he was I think it was a triple away from the cycle. The count, man, it increases their margin for error. They can have games like they had Sunday where they can make a few mistakes, walk some guys, not play perfect, and still beat really good teams. It is huge when Colin Brigham hits home runs, hits doubles, and drives in 4 runs in the middle of that lineup. That really relaxes things, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And going into Saturday's game, I think he was 1 for his last 21 or something like that. Really struggling, but you could see he was starting to square it up. Yes. He just missed a home run to left center, back the kid up to the wall, and he was hitting the ball on the nose, just hitting it right at people. And so you could see him start to get back. And then you seen today what he did with the bat and hitting the double down the right field line and getting home run to left center and playing much better. On top of that, one of the things that we've talked about is we go as Carson Benz goes, right?
Yes.
And that margin of error, like you just mentioned, that if Carson Benz plays really well and he's 2 for 4 or 3 for 5 or 2 for 3, then we've got a good chance of winning. And if he doesn't produce that game, we're going to struggle. And you saw that in Game 1. He's 0 for 4, and we get beat 13-2. And Game 2
is that mental too? Not just the hits you're losing. Is that also, hey, our dude's 0 for 4? Is there any of that?
I don't know, because every one of those guys that's in the lineup was the superstar of their high school team. It's not like these guys have just bloomed when they got to OSU. You know what I mean? They all know how to compete, and they all know what it is. They all know what it means to be the guy. They may not be the guy right now on the team, but they've all been the guy at some point in time in their life, and probably all their life until they got to OSU. And so I don't know if it's that mental of approach where if Carson Bench is struggling, it puts more heat on everybody else. I just think that, like you've mentioned numerous times in this podcast and previous podcast, there's just not a whole lot of room for error. And so with Brigham coming back today, and I thought it was great that Josh rested him yesterday.
Yes.
And then brought him in late in the game. He had a good at bat. I think drew a walk, and then
a big walk, and took some tough pitches.
Big walk, and then had a great day today. I think that was a good move on his part to get him some rest, because if you look at the stats, I don't know that Brigham's been out of a game all year so far. I mean, he pretty much played every game, and so it was good to see him come back and like you said, provide some, even though he was hitting in the bottom third of the order today, provide some, relief in the middle of the order when he gets in there, so that there's not so much pressure on Carson Bench to produce every day, and that it's okay that he goes 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 in a game. We still got some guys in the heart of the lineup that are getting it done. Him or Colin Ritchie or Tyler Wolford or Miola, who has 2 home runs on the weekend. So anyway, I think, just going back to everything that we've talked about, eliminating strikeouts, okay, getting more free bases, and being aggressive at the plate. And I think the games that if you go back and look at the games where they were really aggressive on first pitch fastballs or whether it's in the middle of the plate, outside the plate, inside, when we're swinging the bat and we're aggressive and we're swinging at pitches with less than 2 strikes, you see those walks and strikeouts more mirror each other.
Yep.
In the games where we're, trying to get to the pitch count high for the pitcher to get to the bullpen, it was pretty obvious to me that UCF didn't feel confident in their bullpen. That's why they brought their closer in the 7th inning in game 2, and then you see what happened on game 3 with their bullpen coming into the game. So I don't know what the game plan was there to try and get the pitch count high for the starter to get to their bullpen or whatnot. But I just think, OSU has to go out and are we gonna play to our strengths, or are we gonna play to their weaknesses? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Are we looking at a scouting report? Is it paralysis by analysis? All those other things that coaches have to look at. And, just from a spectator's viewpoint, watching games on TV or from the stands, it just seems to me that the more aggressive they are early in the count, the better they are.
Man, how about Brian Holiday? What a warrior that dude is, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. And, we've talked about him in the past too, of just hearing all the things of, when he was in JUCO and winning a national title in JUCO, and then how he produced in the Cape Cod League in the summertime, and what he's done up to this point on the mound every Saturday that he's pitched. It's been very impressive. He had that little hiccup against Mercer where we had the balk call, and it took him a few batters back in groove. But man, just a guy that, comes off the field in that 8th inning on Saturday, and I was a little surprised to see him not come back out. It looked like, did they have to pitches? Did they have to hog tie him and throw him in the lock, to keep him from coming back out? But very impressive. What do you have, like 12 strikeouts and 1 walk, I think? Yeah. And did everything he could to, he did his part to keep OSU in the ballgame for sure.
100% he did. And I'll tell you what, that's his 2nd outing already. We're not even in April yet, and it's the 2nd outing of the season for him that he's gone over 100 pitches. And it just kind of seemed like to me, Josh and Rob were trying to map that to have Gabe Davis completely ready for Sunday. So when they got to the situation to where it was just 1 inning, I think they felt like they could get the 15 to 20 pitches out of Gabe Davis and still have him readily available for Sunday. So I thought that was, the best laid plans, they don't always work. Things don't always work in baseball. But you have to take Brian Holiday out there. I know you want to go for a complete game, but it's his 2nd 100-plus inning performance. You have Gabe Davis available, who is absolutely dirty, and he goes out there and throws 15 or 20 pitches. Then you're going to have him ready for Sunday in whatever role you need. I thought they mapped that perfectly. It just didn't work.
Yep. And, like you said, Brian Holiday throws 112 pitches, especially this early in the season, first conference weekend. You don't want that to stretch out to 125, 130 pitches, obviously. And
you don't want Gabe Davis to come in with a runner already on and work straight out of the stretch too, right?
Sure, absolutely. And like you said, it worked out exactly probably how they laid it out there, as far as we're gonna take Brian Holiday as far as we think we can go and push him as far as he can go and get him out and hopefully turn it over to Gabe Davis. And on another side of that coin too is, as well as your bullpen threw in the midweek game against OU. I was a little. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that they would have no problem throwing any of those guys out there at any point in time this weekend, as well as they all threw, and the things that we talked about the last podcast. So, yeah, the plan was there, and then we did a great job of taking the lead late innings and handing it over to the guy that is our closer, and it just didn't work out.
Day game after night game. That's tough to begin with. That's always tough, especially after that type of disappointment. But we talk about all the time, hey, thank God it's the next day and not right after that. You know, if Oklahoma State had to play a game, say, 30 minutes after what happened Saturday night, they probably would have got run ruled, right? But still, having even said that, showing up the next day after that, as an Oklahoma State fan, you really have to feel like those kids respected the jersey, they respected the Cowboys on the jersey, they respected their head coach, and they wanted to win. I mean, they want to have a good team. I really thought Sunday was just a show of, hey, we care, we want to be good, and so we're going to come out and show this on Sunday. They showed some pride.
Yeah, and you're one pitch away from winning the Saturday game. You know what I mean?
Against a really good team, man. UCF's good.
And it's not, I mean, they entered, let's see, on Friday, entering the Friday game, they were number 5 RPI, right? And by the time Saturday's game started, they were number 4 RPI. So, and you can look at RPI and rankings and all that kind of stuff, but they've played well, and they've played quality opponents already this year. And so it's not surprising to see that it was going to be a battle going in and playing these guys. But, you know, coming back on Sunday at noon from a game where, you know, would you rather lose by 10 or would you rather lose by 1? That's always the theory, right? Would you rather get blown out, you know, in a ball game and just know that the other team was better than you, or would you rather get beat by 1 knowing you can come right back the next day and have a chance?
Yeah,
I would say in a sport where you get to redeem yourself the next day and not be like football where you have to wait 7 days until the next Saturday. I think, you know, losing by 1, those guys are like, man, we're 1 pitch away from winning. That guy runs into 1, hits it the other way, and it flies out of the ballpark. Tip your hat. Let's go back and win the ball game on Sunday. So it was great to see those guys show up and be aggressive, like I said earlier, from at bat number 1 and put a bunch of runs on the board early and come out with the victory.
Right. Can't say enough about Jackson Kroll, man. He took that 2-strike pitch up the middle. That was a huge base hit that he got in that Sunday game. This dude has just figured out a way to get base hit after base hit. He's hitting .352 after the Sunday game, and he's done it every which way. Can't say enough about Jackson Kroll.
Yeah, just a great leadoff guy in those situations where, like I said earlier, depending on who's catching at the time, it looks like those lineups have been pretty consistent on Jackson Kroll being the DH when Carter's in the game, and that they had Zach Earhart at the leadoff when Doherty caught. But it looks like, you know, Charlie Carter has started 2 games this weekend. You know, it looks like maybe they've settled on him defensively. Obviously, he struggles at the plate a little bit as a freshman, but settled on him. But, yeah, having Jackson Kroll at the top of the lineup where he's going to put the ball in play kind of has high strikeouts at times for a leadoff guy. But, yeah, also got a leadoff guy that's got a lot of pop in his bat and can turn on one and get you on the board quickly. So, yeah, uses all parts of the field and gets base hits up the middle, can hit it out of the ballpark and can steal bases for you. And so was very good on Sunday game in Game 3 to kind of be the tone setter, like you've mentioned before, for the rest of the offense.
You mentioned how this was a huge deal for all of the guys that were in state against OU. You know, the Avery Ortizes, the Carson Benjes, and all of those guys. It's big to everybody. I mean, but the guys that grew up in Oklahoma, it is special. Bedlam is a special deal. So really cool to get to see Aiden Miola, Brian Holiday, and then Zach Earhart. All 3 guys from the state of Florida get to go back to Florida and play very well. That was a cool thing to watch. Yeah,
it was. And, you know, Miola has 2 home runs on the weekend, and I'm sure it's fun for those guys too to go back home. I'm sure they had family or high school friends or whatever the case in the stands watching them. So it's good to see them go back home and play very well, just like you mentioned, like it is for the Oklahoma kids to play well against OU or Oral Roberts or any of your in-state teams. So yeah, very good. You know, the heart of your team, if you ask me, when you're talking about the heart, when you're talking about Miola and you're talking about Brian Holiday, even though this is his first year at OSU, he's obviously taken on the leadership role of the pitching staff and is the guy that's looked upon to go out there and produce every game like he did in game 2 against Central Florida. So, yeah, very, very good to see those guys go back home and play well in Florida. But it's not like that's the only place they're playing well.
Yeah, right.
They're playing well wherever they're at. So it's fun watching those guys, and we've mentioned those names numerous times throughout the podcast, whether it's Miola or it's Holiday or Jackson Crow being the tone setter at the top of the lineup, or Carson Bench. All those guys play well. Probably the biggest thing for me, and the thing that I kept harping on last podcast, was the mental approach, and how we were going to approach that midweek game. And after that midweek game, saying, okay, this is a blessing and a curse, because now this is the expectation,
yes.
Right? This is how you can play. If you go out and you're aggressive and you're swinging the bat aggressive with balls in the zone, and you're swinging at first pitch fastballs and that sort of thing, this is the expectation moving forward. And it just didn't produce on Friday and very much of Saturday. But Sunday they showed up and was aggressive again and attacking the baseball in the zone, and got a similar product to what they did in the midweek game. So hopefully they get into a more consistent groove of being more aggressive at the plate. And, the thing that frustrates me a little bit is the sloppy errors at times, the
miscommunications, weird miscommunication
on the fly ball in the outfield. And then you have that ball that gets hit between short and third, and we don't even get a glove on it. By the time it stops rolling, it's barely off the dirt, And so, anyway, those things kind of frustrate you, but hopefully they can get more to consistent. Those things don't show up as much, and you don't talk about them as much when you're scoring 14 runs in a game, right? Or they don't show up as much if you're winning by 4, 5, 6 runs. But you start talking about those things consistently when you're talking about 1-run ball games that you lose, right? And even though those things didn't occur in the games that you lost, those are things that can still happen. Well, I guess the bunt did, where we throw it over the first baseman's head and we throw the ball in the left field on a pickoff and those type of things. Those are the things that make a difference in a one-run ball game. And so those are 2 outs right there that we didn't get that could have, that possibly ended up costing us some runs. So anyway, I think they need to clean those things up and be a little bit more consistent, or a lot more consistent, I should say, in their approach to the offensive side, and be aggressive. And they have so much more analytics now with the scouting reports and that type of thing than when I was playing or you were playing. And, it's almost like sometimes you have too much information, right?
No doubt.
Here's who we are. Here's the jersey here's the jersey we wear. Here's the name that's on the front of our jersey. Here's how we're successful. And we're successful when we attack the baseball, right? Regardless if the scouting report says this guy's going to nibble on the edge, let's give him a high pitch count. They're weak in their bullpen. Let's get the guy out in a low pitch count because we're shelling him, you know what I mean? And so, and that doesn't always work either. You're gonna live and die by the brand that you play. But it just seems like to me that the more aggressive approach we take and the earlier we swing in the count, the better off we are.
Missouri State on Tuesday. We will talk more about that on our podcast that we will release on Thursday. So super excited about that. And then the TCU Horned Frogs come into OkState Stadium this coming up weekend. Hey, don't miss that. That's going to be a lot of fun in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So, Coach Rainwater, thank you so much for joining. And until next time, till we talk to you on Thursday, hopefully about a big win over the Missouri State Bears, want to thank you for tuning in and say, go Pokes.
Go Pokes.